Hey everyone, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a Retribution Paladin DPS guide for 8.0.1. I'm going to mention simulating your character, and I suggest that you use raybots.com for this, as it is free to use. You can become a patron or supporter if you choose to, and I will leave a link in the description of the video so you can learn how to simulate. If you have any questions, you can ask. If I get too many questions, I'll make a video on how to use the raybots, but it's very simple, very user-friendly interface. I'm going to get started first by talking about your stat priority. So this is going to change depending on your gear. So if you have gear with all haste on it, so all your main stat on all your pieces of gear was haste, then haste wouldn't be very good for you. So that's going to change based upon the gear you have. Now, in order to know this, you do need to simulate your character. So to get the most accurate stat priority, I will recommend you simulating your character. However, I will give you a very general basis and something you can use in a very general way, and that would be haste, crit, versatility, then mastery. With crit and versatility being fairly close, although I would definitely always go crit over versatility if possible. So again, haste, crit, versatility, mastery, that's very generalized, and you'll never know if you don't completely simulate your character. When you simulate your character, it gives you a pawn string as well. You can do a stat weights and gives you a pawn string. I have a video on how to use the add-on pawn, so if you're interested in that, you can check that out. I made that during Legion, I believe, and it works the same exact way now as it did in Legion. So next up, we're going to talk about rotation or move priority, and for this we're going to go through, and it's going to change depending on what talents you choose, but this is the general move priority, because it's not really a rotation, it's more of priority of moves that are available. Number one, we have Inquisition. This would be number one if you chose that talent, and it's number one because if you have this talent, then you need to keep this buff up on you at all times. So you want to always keep this buff up and with the max holy power possible to give you the longest duration of it. Next will be Crusader Avenging Wrath, assuming you have 3 or more holy power to spend. And that'll be your cooldown. You'll also want to, make sure that it's during a window where you actually get to use all of the time of it. So if you're going to have to be running out of something or doing some other mechanic, then maybe wait a few seconds before you pop it. Wait till you can sit there and DPS. Next would be Execution Sentence if you chose it. Next would be Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm at 5 holy power. That's important. Basically, you want to use your holy power spenders when you're at max holy power. You never want to go to 6 holy power or 7 or anything, but you want to spend your Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm at 5 if possible. Next would be Wake of Ashes. That would be at 0 holy power if you chose that talent, which I'll get into, but you probably should. And next we have Blade of Justice at 3 or less holy power, again because you don't want to go over 5. But to break that rule on the very next one, we have Wake of Ashes at 1 holy power because it's such a powerful move that using it, even though you're wasting 1 of your holy power, it's still worth using. Then we have Judgment, Hammer of Wrath if you chose that, Consecration if you chose that, Crusader Strike way towards the bottom because Crusader Strike basically is used as a filler item to max out your holy power up to 5, or to just use, while you're waiting for one of your stronger abilities to pop up. Last would be Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm at 3 or 4 holy power. However, I'm going to have a couple notes on that. I'm finding myself having to use it at 4 holy power with my current haste. I'm sitting 12-13% haste myself, and I'm finding myself having to use it at 4 holy power to be max effective. This isn't ideal at all. You want to be at 5 holy power, but you can still do good parses and good DPS at 4 holy power. As far as 3 holy power goes, I never really do that unless you're about to use your Wake of Ashes, because that would put you down to 0. So obviously the best time to use your Wake of Ashes is at 0. So if your Wake of Ashes is up or right about to be up, feel free to use your Templar's Verdict at 3 holy power in that case. Next, we'll go ahead and we will talk about our talents. And I'll go tier by tier here. What's cool about this expansion is there is a little bit of choice available to you because some of the talents are fairly close to each other. In the first tier, we have Zeal, Righteous Verdict, and Execution Sentence. Right now in this tier, Righteous Verdict is just kind of the clear-cut option to choose. It only affects Templar's Verdict, so it doesn't help AoE at all. So some people say to use Zeal for multi-target, but it's not necessarily even any better still. it can be, but they'll be, as long as there's a time in the fight where you aren't multi-targeting, then Righteous Verdict's probably better. Other than that, you probably, I mean, I guess you could use Zeal if you're just going to be constantly AoEing. In the execution sense, they just really have never completely figured this talent out. Again, they are all somewhat close to each other, the talents are, but Righteous Verdict is the choice. The next tier, we have Fire Justice, Blade of Wrath, Hammer of Wrath. These are all extremely close, so you really want to simulate your character on these three. Hammer of Wrath and Blade of Wrath are the two top choices. I personally use Hammer of Wrath, but there could be a scenario or a simulation showing you that Blade of Wrath could be just as good. In the next tier, it's of course just a choice. There's no direct DPS here in this next tier, but you have Fist of Justice, Binding Light, or Repentance. Repentance can be nice if you need to CC, especially in like a Mythic Plus. Blinding Light, of course, can also kind of CC in a way. Fist of Justice is a decent PvP talent, and the one that I choose to use as well because it's just a passive. Since it's not doing any direct DPS, that's just what I choose to use. The next tier, we only really have two options. Divine Judgment doesn't really work that well yet. Consecration and Wake of Ashes. I will recommend you using Wake of Ashes because Consecration, you can't choose where it goes, it doesn't move with you. Well, you choose where it goes, but it doesn't move with you. So if the boss moves or adds move, whatever, then your Consecration's not doing anything. So just use Wake of Ashes, and that'll make your life a lot easier, even though they are fairly close in DPS. And the next tier, again, is a kind of a choice thing. You have mobility, or you have two kind of defensive abilities. I use Unbreakable Spirit. It just, honestly, getting an extra Divine Shield off, having an extra possible Shield of Vengeance, that's what I kind of like to use personally. I have seen people, Cavalier, if you have to run out a lot, then you might want to go ahead and choose Cavalier. An Eye for an Eye, that's a little bit more specific because it is only physical damage, but it's still a good talent if you're going to be needing to avoid physical damage. Next here we have Selfless Healer, Justicar's Vengeance, Word of Glory. Again, this is a choice. Word of Glory is probably maybe the best talent in this tier. Justicar's Vengeance is my favorite talent in this tier. However, I use Selfless Healer. Again, I just want to use another passive in this case. The less stuff I need to worry about, the better, especially, if it's not affecting my DPS at all. Of course, if you need something to help your group out, then you want to choose the talent that's going to help your group the most, which could be Word of Glory. In the last tier, you really have two choices right now, but we have Divine Purpose, Crusade, and Inquisition. I use Divine Purpose because it's passive. However, this does rely on luck a little bit. Inquisition might even sim a little bit higher for you, depending where you're at on your gear, but it will be close to Divine Purpose. Given the choice between the two, Divine Purpose can kind of be more of an obvious choice because Inquisition requires a lot more upkeep and a lot more work to keep it up. However, if you just are very unlucky or just not going to put your DPS in the hands of luck and you're a skilled player, just use Inquisition because you can rely on yourself and you don't have to worry about any kind of bad luck hurting you or hurting your team or anything like that. So just to recap, the talents that I use specifically for in most cases are Righteous Verdict, Hammer of Wrath, Fist of Justice, Wake of Ashes, Unbreakable Spirit, Selfless Healer, and Divine Purpose. I will also say that Divine Purpose seems to be working better in most parses that I've seen for AoE fights. So if you're going to be doing a lot of AoEing, Divine Purpose, it might just be the way to go anyways, and it's also pretty good for single target as well. Next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to go ahead and talk about the Azerite. So this is a big thing in this expansion, obviously, and your Azerite traits can matter a lot. I didn't really realize how much they mattered at the very beginning of the expansion. To look at this in a very full view, I'll suggest going to bloodmallet.com. I'll actually give you the direct link to the Retribution Paladin part down in the description below. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to mention just like the top 5 or so because, there's 20, 30 traits and I don't want to go through each one individually. And I'll talk about single target and multi-target. I'm only going to be talking about the outer tier of it, although the inner tier does matter as well. But I'm just going to be talking about the outer tier of the talents because those give you the most DPS increase. So as far as the traits go, I'll give you the top 6 actually in this case. We have Thunderous Blast, which is number 1 by, this is for single target. Thunderous Blast, which is number 1 by pretty large margin. Laser Matrix, Dagger in the Back, that's a very common one you can get from like Freehold. Champion of Azeroth, Resin's Fury, and Tidal Surge. I include Tidal Surge because, again, that's a very common one that you can get, and that's 6th on the list as far as simulating what the traits do. Now, when you switch it over to multi-target, then you have Synaptic Spark Capacitor at number 1, Barrage of Many Bombs, Champion of Azeroth, and honestly, I'm not going to go past that because the first two are way ahead of the other ones. So in Champion of Azeroth, however, you'll notice that's 4th in single target and 3rd in multi-target. So if you were just being someone who doesn't really want to change your traits or carry multiple pieces of gear, Champion of Azeroth might be the best choice for you. However, if you're going to have multi-target, then you're going to want to have Thunderous Blast for your single target, and Synaptic Spark Capacitor for multi-targets would be the best possible choice. Of course, eye level does matter. This is assuming all your Azerite gear is the same item level, because obviously increase of strength does matter. Now, to figure out how much that matters, then you'll need to simulate the different pieces of gear on yourself, which there's a way you can do a gear compare on the raidbots.com, and you can actually check that out and see which item would work best for you, because it might be a huge eye level upgrade in Azerite, and it might still be, and that might make it an upgrade on its own, even if it has a bad trait. However, a bad trait could make it not an upgrade, and that, while that can be frustrating perhaps, it is something that you should probably check out. Next, we're going to talk about trinkets. So again, in this trinkets, I'll do single target and multi-target. I'm just going to give you a top 3 on single target because there's quite a big jump between the top 3 and then the 4th one. So we have Syringe of Bloodborne Infinity, the Krolak's Claw, which is from a world boss, and the Bygone Bee Almanac, which is a BOE that you can buy, is number 3. When it comes to AoE, we have Syringe of Bloodborne Infirmity again. So again, that's number 1, regardless of what you do. And number 2, we have Disc of Systemic Regression. And number 3, we have Bygone Bee Almanac. Now, the first 2 are kind of heads and tails above, but with Bygone Bee being also the 3rd in the single target, it's easy to say, you know, if you could just get the Syringe of Bloodborne Infirmity and Bygone Bee Almanac at a high eye level, then that would just be the best possible choice as far as DPS goes. So again, I'll give the link for these trinkets as well. It's all on the same site, and you can kind of scroll down and look more at the trinkets. But those are the top ones. The good news is that a lot of the other ones are very close to each other. There are some trinkets that just completely stink. Maybe I should mention those. If you're using for single target, if you're using Murktha's Fang or Krognod Femur, that's not good. And for AoE, if you're using the Femur or the Ravissar Skull Bijou, that's not good because those are not very good ones at all. And you'll have access to these full charts on the site, and I'll throw up a little image as well in the video probably if you're able to scroll in on that. Lastly, I did want to talk a little bit about weapons. Now that we have weapons again, instead of having artifact weapons, there is a fairly big thing. So generally, just increasing your eye level on a weapon is going to be an upgrade because the max damage that it does matters a ton in weapons. If you just played during Legion, you might not even know that because you just always use your artifact weapon, but the max damage is always going to matter a lot for melee DPS, especially for Ret Paladins. There is some melee DPS where it doesn't matter as much. So generally, an item level upgrade is going to be an upgrade regardless of stats. You can simulate it. Obviously, if it has, let's say, versatility and mastery versus crit and haste, your 2 top ones, that could be possibly a deciding factor. However, there is a weapon in the game called Getu. Good luck pronouncing this. Getaiku, Cut of Death. It drops from King's Rest Mythic. If you get this at a high enough item level, it's always going to be the best currently for you. And this is for, patch 8.0.1. So the general rule on this is if you have this weapon, so I have a 345 of this weapon, I would need at least a 350 of any other weapon for it to probably even be comparable. And of course you can simulate that. Perhaps the stats of that 350 just would put it over the line by a little bit. But as a general rule, the effect on the Cut of Death is worth 5 item levels. So that's a big deal, and it's something to know. That's just the best weapon you can get. So if you're stuck with a blue weapon still right now, or you just have a 340 from a mythic, if you can get a 345 or a 340 even Cut of Death from King's Rest. That's a very good option for you. I promise you that will increase your DPS if you're in that scenario. So I also, I guess I'd be a little remiss not to mention buffs and talent and consumables and everything like that. As far as gems go, you're going to want to use haste as of right now. Probably until we can reach a haste cap, which won't be until later in the expansion. So you want to use gems of haste after, of course, using a 40 strength gem, which is the big jewel crafting gem that'll cost you a couple thousand gold, I'm sure, unless you have a jewel crafter. You want the 40 strength, then you want Owl's Eyes for haste. You want to go ahead and put haste on your rings. There's 27 and a 37 haste. And then you want to put quick navigation, which is also haste, on your weapon. So all haste as far as that goes, except for a 40 strength as far as a gem. As far as consumables goes, you want to use swamp fish and chips for eating, and that will give you haste. You can also use a feast if your guild or group feasts. That gives you the max feast that gives you strength. That's good as well. However, if you're using your own food, swamp fish and chips will be your go-to if possible. And then as far as potions go, honestly, bursting blood and strength are fairly close together, but for me, strength just sims a little bit better personally, so I just use strength in pretty much all scenarios. You can sim and make sure that bursting blood isn't better for you, but for me personally, I use strength in pretty much every scenario so far. I do have some bursting bloods, and maybe I use that on a pull to where I think it's going to be a wipe. I'll use a bursting blood instead of a strength. But so yeah, I think that's about everything. If you have any questions, I will try to answer you below. I think I covered everything. I hope I did. Hopefully I helped some people out. That's always my goal with these. Please subscribe if I helped you out at all. That helps me out a lot. Comment, share, like, all that kind of thing. Again, I'll provide the links down in the description below. Good luck to everybody in this expansion, and as far as Ret Paladin DPS guides go, I'll see you at the next big change of Ret Paladins and kind of update this video as the expansion progresses. So yeah, that's about it, and everybody have a good one. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, go ahead and please subscribe below. You can catch my gaming thoughts and activities on Twitter at RealKneecap, and you can also find me playing live on Twitch at KneecapKilla. Hopefully I'll see you soon, and of course, everybody have a good one.